We're here with Nick, founder of Club Champion, and one of the questions we get asked a lot that I really wanted to bring to you was, we know what fitting is. We've heard it, hey, get fit, get fitted. People say it all different ways, but it's really a science, and it's a numbers game. And we're standing in one of your bays, which is pretty massive and spacious. There's a whole bunch of numbers there, not mine, but not yours either for what that's worth. No, I'm a little further than that, not much. Depends. Online, I'm a lot further. But I wanted to talk about some of these numbers because, in our world, people, it's spin, it's launch angle, and it's ball speed, and that's about it. But there's a lot more to that. So I wanted to throw some things out there for you, and you can kind of explain it and how it matters in your world. Like, start with smash factor. What is it, and why does it matter?
Well, smash factor is the biggest thing, in my opinion, of looking at overall how close you are to the best performance you can be. So what most folks go to a store and they see their ball speed or they see their club head speed, they're never really educated on what was the best club head speed or ball speed they could have. Now, club head speed's a little different because you can only produce so much, and we can see how equipment through a fitting affects your club head speed. But then you should have a certain amount of ball speed based off that club head speed, and that's what most folks don't realize. Based on how hard you're swinging, there should be a certain amount of ball speed coming off that face. And if it's not, there's an efficiency happening somewhere, and we need to fix that through the right shaft, right head, right combo. So smash factor, going back to it, is the division of your ball speed divided by your club head speed, and it tells me how efficient you're being. And so it's just a simple ratio. So we use the tour as the gold standard. I don't care if it's LPGA, PGA, senior PGA, they're all different, going to have different club head speeds. But if you were to take all their drivers across all those tours, they would be at a ratio with a driver of 1.48 or better. And so we figure they're the best in the world, so that's what we should have. The other thing that's beautiful that Smash Factor tells us about efficiency is the USGA has handcuffed a lot of these manufacturers to what they can produce and what they can't produce. So by physics, we know what the highest Smash Factor there should be possible out there. So between having this gold standard of a tour player and then having what physics tells us we can do, Smash Factor is going to tell us how close to optimal we can get you as a club fitter.
And forever that number's been right around 1.50. Yep. When it was using core as measurements. Now with CT, it gets a little bit different. You can get to 1.52, 1.53, correct?
Correct. And that it's funny because I get some people that come in and they'll go, well, how is that possible? And yes, a lot of people don't realize the USGA has changed some of their measurements, so it's gone a little over that yet.
The number that's the biggest talk in our world is spin, and low spin is key, and driver heads now are a lot more low spin than they were 20 years ago. What is spin? And why should it matter to the golfer? And maybe you can dispel some myths that everybody doesn't need low spin.
Yeah, there is no such thing as low or high or whatever. There's just whatever spin should be for you. And the other thing I like folks to really understand is the ball always has backspin on it. There is no such thing as other than backspin, okay? Some people think there's forward spin. There's no forward spin. It's always backspin, and then there's no such thing as side spin. It's just the axis at which it's spinning backwards. And so, you want this optimal spin rate because if you have too much, it's just going to keep climbing in the air and then it falls out. And if you have too little, it knuckles out like a baseball. There's just a right amount. And remember, not everybody launches the ball high, and so if you launch the ball high, you most likely want less spin, and not everybody launches the ball low, but if you launch the ball low, you probably want more spin because then spin will carry it in the air. But based on what your swing is and what you can do physically with a golf club, there's an optimal launch and spin, and that's what like Club Champion does, and it's TrackMan does a great job. We have an optimizer on there that'll show based on your attack angle and based on your club head speed what your optimal launch and spin would be, but you shouldn't fall in the bucket of, I read this online, I need to be this. You need to figure out what it should be for you.
And geography will even play a role with that too, whereas if you live in an area where you're going to get 40 yards of roll, you might want to launch something a little low with less spin compared to Florida where I live where it's going to drop right where it is.
Oh, absolutely. So, it's whether you're going to play the ground game or the high game, and that depends on the course conditions, and that always should be factored in as well.
Now, launch angle is one of the biggest things discussed, but I think a lot of people get launch and ball flight confused. They say, I'm launching this too high, when that's really hard to see with the naked eye, the launch angle. You're really talking about what the ball flight is. Now, in theory, all clubs should fly the same height. The peak height should be the same from your pitching wedge to your driver. We know that's not normally the case. We know most golfers seem to hit it too low. Why is launch angle so important, and what do you do to remedy that?
Well, launch angle starts the whole equation, right? And so, like I try to tell the golfers that come into my bay, think of easy physics that you have at home. Take your garden hose. You have your garden hose, doesn't have a lot of pressure. To get the plants across the deck, you got to raise it higher. So, and then there's a certain point of return. So,
Never heard that before, actually.
so I love giving that analogy because everybody has that in their life and they can understand it. And they're like, oh, okay. So it's not necessarily, to your point, how high it's going to go at the end of the day, because speed and spin and other things have to play in it, but it's going to start how this ball starts off. And, a lot of times the simple keys are, I want folks to know, is if you don't have a lot of ball speed, chances are you need to launch it higher. Where if you have a lot of ball speed, chances are you need to launch it lower. But then there's other characteristics to go into launch, like we just talked about, spin and, that kind of stuff. And then what kind of ball flight we want. Some people want flatter, some people want higher, depending on their game. But yeah, I mean, launch angle is one of those things. It's not one size fits all. You got to see based on what you're doing with your swing. I always use the Bubba example. Bubba hits it a mile, right? And he uses it all, but he's a low launch, high spin guy. And so, everywhere you read, high launch, low spin, right? Not everybody on the PGA Tour does that. Not all you should be doing that.
Fascinating numbers when you do it, because it is a big formula that will equate to distance and accuracy and everything else. Can we talk a little bit about angle of attack, angle of descent? Because I think that's one that's overlooked so often. I'm a negative guy, not ideal. It's, I'm in my mid-40s. I'm not going to change that now, but I'm a steep player. It does mean I generate a lot of spin.
You're the
but
tougher fit.
Right, but I'm not a -5 angle of attack. I'm -2, so I'm getting closer. What is angle of attack, and how does it relate to angle of descent? Because they're very different things.
Yeah. So angle of attack is how you're going to come down and actually hit the golf ball. So some people hit up on it, some people hit down on it, and then there's obviously different degrees of that. And so it's going to tell a club fitter a lot about different things. So like chances are that's going to be one of the things that's going to talk about spin rate or launch angle is going to have a lot to do with that. So, when we see somebody that's steep on a club, odds are we're going to have to do something different than somebody who hits up on it, because it's going to create different spin rates and different launch angles. And what I would also like to say with club fitting is the shaft and club and the swing weight and everything you do in your golf club could dictate that a little bit. So like a lot of times we see people that have a little more steeper descent or steeper attack angle. We usually will go to a little bit softer profile shaft, and then their muscles don't feel like they have to come down so hard, and they start to smooth out a little bit. And
that's exactly what my fitter did. Well, it was Club Champion, but my fitter did that. We moved to something slightly softer, not really in flex, just in dynamics, EI profile. And I actually don't feel like I'm fighting it anymore. I'm hitting the ball further.
Right. And so that's what a lot of people just don't realize, is that how much club fitting can help when you have those certain things. Because I always joke, people go, well, that's bad, so I should change it, right? And I'm like, no, like just to your point, it's -2 isn't that bad. And trust me, there's plenty of PGA Tour players that have made a hell of a living with -5 to +5. So it's just knowing what you are and then getting that diagnosed and then getting equipment that helps it. And then there's angle of descent. So land angle is what you're asking about, right? And so land angle is another interesting thing. Now, I don't personally look at land angle a ton because I look at the beginning. If you get the beginning ballistics right, a lot of the things we talked about, the end should work. Now, I always pay attention to it, but what it is we're looking at how the ball's landing and based on what shots you're trying to do, like a driver, for I'm trying to pitching wedge into a green. They all have an optimal land angle based on the PGA Tour. That being said, we're not all PGA Tour players, and then there's some reality of different, some courses you don't want a steep angle attack, some courses you do, or land angle. So, when you're looking at your land angle, you're looking at it based on the courses you're playing, the conditions you're playing, the shots you hit, and then optimizing it based off that game. So you get the proper roll or not roll of the ball after it lands.